pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and welcome to our February 5th council meeting. Please note Mr. Bachnight is absent. Okay, first item on our agenda, items from council. I have several. And then, of course, Dr. Andrew, you have your item, and then we have the pothole thing. Do you want to do the short, quick ones first?
Go ahead.
Does anybody have anything before items from council?
I think
Okay.
you were going to ask about.
Oh, yeah, I have them here. Okay. Donald, update on the airline and Ben Jordan cave, the massive problem you have there.
Sure. So as you saw in the press releases, we had a 24-inch sewer line collapse at the intersection of Ben Jordan and Airline. We have excavated down to that pipe. It's about 18 feet, and the contract crew that we have out there was able to run another pipe through so that they could get a line, and now they're planned to probably on Friday start pipe bursting that whole line. So there's about a 200-foot segment of pipe that we will replace. That is a very tricky project because it is so deep, and there are a lot of other utilities in that area. There's a 20-inch water line. There's a raw water line that from one of our wells that goes directly to the Plant 3. There's a couple of large storm boxes, and there's also a 6-inch high-pressure gas line that runs through there as well. So it's a very difficult project. It's going to take a lot of expertise, but we feel pretty confident that the crew that's out there can get it done. I anticipate that road being closed probably through the end of next week, and hopefully we can get that done and get it open back up.
That's pretty fast. But
Yeah, I think it's a small project, but it's made difficult because of all the pipes that are in there,
Right.
in the depth. But this crew really seems to know what they're doing, and they're really moving fast on it. So I anticipate them getting it without any unforeseen events,
Yeah.
getting it through within the next 2 weeks.
And I appreciate that y'all took action so fast and went ahead and just ratified that. I know it'll come back to us maybe at the next meeting, but
You should have the contract next meeting, but we didn't want to wait.
yeah, you can't wait on those kind of things. Just got to get her done. And also the fact that you decided to just go from manhole to manhole, because when you do point repair,
Yeah.
a month later it fails further down
Right.
and you're doing it again. I thought that was a really good move,
Yeah.
so.
One
Good job.
point that I failed to mention was we were trying to keep that traffic, that one lane of traffic open on Airline eastbound, but unfortunately we found a large cavern underneath when we started to excavate, so it's just not safe. As we were still digging out material, some of the sides of the road were falling in a little bit, and because it's so moist out there, we decided it's not safe for the motoring public. Just better to close the whole thing.
Okay. Well, I think
I have a
hopefully everybody be
question.
patient over there.
Is there any probability of the water for the people around there to be shut off at any point?
As long as we can keep everything shored up, it should be fine. There's always a chance that during that excavation something could happen, but we're gonna do everything we possibly can to keep that from happening.
Okay. And they will be informed if something does happen, so that way, I'm pretty close to there, that's why I'm saying that.
I understand. Yes, ma'am. If we see something that has a potential to fail, or we'll go ahead and make notification. But of course, if something does happen, we'll also make notification as soon as we can.
Okay, appreciate it.
Sure.
Very good.
Yes, sir.
I've seen the city crews out there. Are we contracting out some of that business?
We are contracting out the repair work, but what the city crews are doing out there are setting up bypass pumping and kind of running the traffic control. Temporarily, we were using waste hauling trucks to vacuum from one manhole ahead of the blockage and then drive it around and dump it back into the sewer system behind the blockage. We're getting very, very close to having some bypass pumping set up so that we can release those trucks, and then city staff will man those diesel-powered pumps to move that wastewater more efficiently.
And you brought up traffic control. So I drove by there about 9:30 p.m. a couple of nights ago, and I
Yes, sir.
saw city employees in their vehicles.
Right.
So we're doing the traffic control.
We're
The
we're
city
working with the traffic
employees?
control, but we're also removing barricades for those trucks that are hauling that waste.
No one, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have 3 requests for upcoming meetings. An update on Harvey outstanding, what we haven't gotten reimbursed, and just a little, now, we get a quarterly report in our read file, I understand, but I just want to have a conversation and have staff be ready to answer questions about some of the reimbursements and what we're waiting on, et cetera. Another, I'd like to talk about on a future agenda, under items from council, the mowing contract that we do along Loop 463, which is, I believe, from, is that, what highway? Quero Highway down to 59 Business. I want to talk about, I know, just maybe a map of what we mow, how often we mow it, how much it costs us. And we'll talk about it, but just have it, be ready for that on upcoming agenda.
I'm fine with that, but I think TxDOT also mows that, so
Yes,
just make sure the
yes.
report includes both.
Right. I think one time they mow it and then we,
Twice a year, TxDOT mows it, and then we mow it the rest of the time.
yeah.
So,
And the third thing is the fire contract with the county. I'd like to just talk about that here with y'all. But I want to make sure we have advance notice for everybody. So those are 3 things I think we could do easily at our next meeting. So that's all I had. Anything from y'all before we go into single-side garbage pickup? Okay, Dr. Young?
I've kind of brought this up at a meeting before, and I was looking at ideas for cost savings, and I spoke with Daryl about it in length, brought up the pros, brought up cons, and wanted his ideas and expertise in talking with some municipalities that were doing it as well. I don't know what the cost savings could be. I'm interested to know what they could be exponentially, throughout the city. But of course, we have to value that and weigh that on service. And I understand that. There's pros and cons with everything. If it was all pros, it'd already be done, I'm sure. And so I really just wanted a kind of a cost-benefit analysis, and I'm trying to find a place to shake a money tree and find money so that we can fix these roads. That's kind of the impetus of all of this, and we probably need a money forest, to be honest. But I'll give it over to Daryl and see if you can explain a little bit more what we talked about as far as even doing a pilot program. But when I talked with Daryl and Charmel about this, I was very cautious and said, this still comes up to the vote of 7 of us, okay? And whether we choose to even go down a pilot program to even see if this is worthwhile. I don't know, but that's for us to decide.
And I know Daryl's going to cough at every word he
try not
says.
to.
He's going to cough. So let me try to
2 of us.
let me talk just a little bit, and hopefully I can save your voice a little bit. But after what Dr. Young asked us to look at, Daryl and his staff went out and looked at neighborhoods, recognizing that this program would not work in a lot of neighborhoods in Victoria because of the way the driveways are lined up, parking on streets, and different obstacles that the neighborhoods had. So Daryl came up with, after that audit of all the neighborhoods, I think it was 5,
Yeah.
okay, 5 neighborhoods, and thank you. So this chart shows, one, they looked at the neighborhoods and the pros and cons of why the neighborhoods would work. And he ranked those based on which neighborhood, which, as you can see, is Connie Creek area. That would be the the best neighborhood for it to possibly work in. And so with this in mind, what we needed tonight from council was, do you want us to go ahead and look at a neighborhood to survey? Because we talked early on about we would survey the residents because we would need 100% compliant, voluntary compliant. This is, I want to repeat that, it's a voluntary compliance if council chose to do this. So voluntary compliance before we would even move forward but we would do the survey, come back to council to see if council wishes for us to continue to move forward. Because it's not gonna work if everybody's not willing to participate in it. So, and I'm sure, but so tonight, based on what Dr. Young asked, that's kind of where we're at, staff's at tonight. We need to know, are you interested in us surveying any of these neighborhoods, all the neighborhoods, or one of the neighborhoods to see if it's a potential project? Or does the majority of council say, it's not an idea at this time that we wish to pursue? And that's what staff needs to know for our next step.
There are some other neighborhoods that qualify. Just keep in mind, we looked at neighborhoods that we thought this would be easy to put in and easy to take out if it doesn't work.
Hey, Daryl, on dead-end streets, how are we maneuvering trash truck right now? Are they going in, backing out, coming back, backing back in?
Yes, sir.
And so there's a lot of reversing
Yes, sir.
down
And there
streets?
are places in town where that would work on dead ends and also one-ways. Places like we looked at Silver City area, there's dead ends there. It would not work simply because of all the parking and everything that's on the street.
Have you looked at parking daytime versus evening? And does that change?
What we've done is we've taken into account school zones. We've taken, because it changes during the day. You know, it's really busy in the morning, not in the afternoon. Or, I'm sorry, in the afternoon. So we've taken all of that into account, yes, sir. Mainly based off of what time we believe we will get to that area.
Correct.
I have a question on the chart, looking at Colony Creek, because I have had a phone call from somebody out there. But under the comments, it seems like you're just talking about a couple of streets even within that subdivision.
Well, there's that one-way street that's in there, and then there are a couple of other streets that we noticed some issues.
So are you simply looking at Newport, Willow Way? Really just Newport and Willow Way, or are you looking
Well,
at
we're
Colony Creek also?
We're looking at Colony Creek. Let me go
Okay.
to the map here. So that's the part of Colony Creek, and we're only looking at Phase 1, Colony Creek.
Right, that's right. Okay.
So you can see that pretty much covers most of that neighborhood.
Daryl, and some of the other places that have done this, I think you spoke to them, how did they initiate this?
They pretty much the same way we're doing. They pick certain areas based off of the compatibility of performing the program. They did also do pilot programs. They did surveys. Both of them did surveys. One of them used SurveyMonkey. The other did a mail out to seek back response, because if they didn't get 100% participation, it wasn't going to work.
Were they able to tell you any of their savings?
Yeah, yes, sir. I believe it was Southport saw about a 40% savings in fuel. They really didn't ever quantify the exact savings on manpower or truck cost.
Daryl, did they say that all the city went with this, or did they just go with parts of the city?
Both of those cities are just parts of the city. Neither one is completely single site.
Okay.
You're always going to have main streets like Navarro, Main Street, Laurent, that it's going to be, you really can't do a single site program. And we have customers on all those streets. You've also got neighborhoods that have a lot of low wires, low hanging tree limbs, lots of mailboxes, different things, lots of on-street parking that makes a difference.
Okay. So we're not looking at 100% participation either way?
Well, if we choose to do this pilot program, we need 100% participation from where we do the
Right.
pilot program.
I understand that, but you're not talking about, okay, let's
whole
do the whole
city?
city?
No,
No,
ma'am.
okay. Because I think that might
Our
help some people.
recommendation or can we go back to that slide? I'm sorry.
I can,
These are the neighborhoods that we
Right,
felt
I
like might
understand.
work. That's
Okay, I
it.
understand.
That's it.
going forward, most of your newer neighborhoods with underground utilities, small trees, things like that, they'll work in maybe going forward.
Okay,
The problem with trying to go back to the other parts of the city is that they're just not built to handle that. The streets are narrower, different things.
okay.
Yeah,
I was just thinking, you know, because if the public's thinking that we're gonna force this on them, and we're not, it might be more acceptable, because, you know, first it sounds like everybody has to do it. But, you know, for constraints like that, we wouldn't, you know, require the whole city to do it.
Well, and, you know, going back to the initial conversation after Dr. Young brought it, there was no mention up here of 100% of the city. So I'm not sure where that, you know, got stated or, you know, but it, you know, it happens. I understand it happens, but it was never discussed when we discussed it back in November.
Okay.
So, and then two, but the fine detail there is, though, the neighborhood, if you choose to move forward with one of these problems, then we're asking that 100% of those residents in that neighborhood that we survey would have to agree to participate for us to come back and recommend that we would do it.
Okay, and based on whatever outcome, we would decide to do it or not to do it in this neighborhoods?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
That's our recommendation at
We
this
would come
time.
back to council and say, we've gotten back the surveys and here's what they said.
okay, so they're not, you know, locked into it if we go ahead and do that pilot program there?
Well, we'd do the survey first.
Okay.
We'd find out if the residents in the neighborhood are even willing to look at doing this.
Oh, okay, I understand now.
Yes,
And I
ma'am.
I will
if-
speak, I think afterwards, then we'd probably look at data to see if it's even worth it from that standpoint. I mean, just,
Right.
it's like a science experiment.
Yeah.
If I could draw your attention to what's on the monitor now, this is kind of the way it would work. We'd seek council approval to proceed. We'd make a decision on an area or multiple areas, depending on what council wants. We would send out letters for the survey, and then we would, it'd help us make decisions on whether we continue the project or we abort. At that point, when I received the surveys back, I would come to council and say, here's what we got from Colony Creek, here's what we got from Silverado Trail or wherever. And we only had 20% return or we had 90% return and they're for it or they're against it but again, at that point, you would have a decision point to make. If you decide to go forward with it, we would start the real work would start. That's creating the routes, beginning the education process, going through and setting up the pickups, because I've got to educate my drivers as well as the citizens. We would have a 2-week grace period like we had when we started automated at first. We would track the productivity, and then I'd be able to come back to the council and say, here is what we were able to save compared to this is what it used to cost to do that. Here's what the current cost is, savings or not.
Okay.
We'll know the difference.
That's good.
So Sharma, you made a comment, and you ended it with, if council agrees to move forward. So that was your question to us at the time, or
Yes, sir. That's
were
why.
you going to wait until he made his presentation to hear from us?
Oh, it doesn't matter. We'll hear from y'all. You know.
Because bluntly, it's no.
Yeah, we need to
Okay,
get consensus tonight.
We just need to know if council wishes us to take that next step. You know, it was brought up, I think, in November, the concept, and at that time, we said y'all can think about it. It was new to you. We'd bring it back to see what your feelings were on it. So we're back now, just following back up with, you know, council. So if a majority of council wishes us to move forward with the survey, that next step, then that's where we're at. We need that direction tonight.
But whenever we bring up a topic for discussion and the possibility to implement a program, I wait to form my opinion until after I hear from the citizens of Victoria and my constituents. I've heard from the elderly, the disabled, and the very young that are tasked with that family responsibility of taking out the trash. I have not heard not one pro for this. They're all cons. Not one person has said, yes, this is great, this is gonna be a good savings. There's a safety aspect of it, there's the neighborhood feud aspect of it, the parking aspect of it, in a whole lot of neighborhoods. I can't see doing it in just a couple of neighborhoods and not the other. It's going to be a nightmare. I just cannot see with a city of our age. Some of Victoria is old. It's been around. Like in my neighborhood, there are no ditches. You know, there are no curbs, excuse me, there are ditches. Others, like the neighborhoods off Airline, are very The houses are real close, and there's enough parking for one vehicle and one trash can. Yet we have to keep the trash cans 5 foot apart for the trucks to pick it up. It's gonna be a nightmare. I think we'll, I don't see, what good is it gonna be to waste our time trying to prove that it might work? We're gonna, there's just a lot of feuds that are gonna occur. Police calls are gonna increase because of the feuds. I can't see it.
Feuds?
Feuds,
Between people.
neighborhood. So,
Yeah.
If you don't mind too, and I understand you're talking to me, but, you know, our staff's role is council brings up ideas,
right.
and staff's role
So-
is
Okay, well, I was
to
just bringing it towards you,
flesh
but
those
the whole- I'm
ideas,
talking to the
flesh
whole
those
council.
ideas out, and that's
I
what we're
can't see it.
doing, and that's why we need a decision point from council. So, but,
Jan,
thank
did you
you.
want to go
Just
ahead?
trying to find a road, I'm just trying to find the money to fix roads,
I
Mr.
just,
Garza.
first of all,
And
I want to partially address that, but not really. But make clear, because somebody has told me that their elderly mother cannot take her trash can across Airline Street. And I want to stress to everyone that I believe no one here would ask anyone, elderly or not, to take a trash can across Airline. And if you look at that chart, which keeps coming and going, those are quiet neighborhoods that you're describing. Now, one of them, though, did say something, it had Red River and Vine as boundaries, which made me concerned with wanting to say we're not going to have to take our carts across Airline. But you're talking about quiet neighborhoods.
Interior streets.
Interior streets that are suited to this, meaning that there is space between, it's not super.
Yes,
Tight.
ma'am. And I'd like to just remind, because I've had the call, the mayor talked to me a week or so ago. We do provide a waiver service for elderly and people who cannot get their own trash out. Now, that's not open to just anybody, but we provide that at no extra cost. It's a matter of just calling the solid waste office and having us come out and meet with you, show us where to put that container, and our drivers go up, get it for you, bring it out, dump it, and put it back on your service days. That's both recycling and garbage.
I want to ask another question, though. The cost savings that you would anticipate if we were to do this would come from a truck only having to go through a neighborhood one time as opposed to twice. Somebody's asked me about the wear and tear on that side of the street.
I can't answer towards that. I mean, we would be on one side of the street. We
Already.
have not discussed
They are already
changing
on that
every
side,
year
yeah.
or whatever like that, anything like
Right.
that, no.
Okay, but they are already on one side of the street, so that's going to happen
We
anyway.
drive both sides now. Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Halapaska, you're the only one. Before I weigh in, you want to?
Well, there has been a fair amount of adverse reaction from just people coming in my shop, voice their opinion. I stopped counting at 20. And so.
I remember the phone
Don't know
call.
how many people really, but it was above 25 probably. But they, not a positive on it. It just felt like, too many areas were not conducive to this. So you'd have these little odd pockets around the city where it might work. And it just still wasn't any enthusiasm from the general public of the people that walk in and voice their opinion. That is not a scientific survey. That is nothing.
Okay, so, yeah, I want to applaud Andrew for your bringing it up. We always need to talk about everything. We need to figure out if we can save a nickel or a dime, and so good job at bringing it up. I think, I don't know who it was, TV station got a little ahead of us, I think, and then I started getting an avalanche of people, how dare you? What, how dare us what? We hadn't even talked about it, but that's okay, that's part of it, and I appreciate you bringing it up. And when we automated the collection, I know Tom was here, Josephine, you weren't on council, and, the sky was falling then when we automated the collection, and it turned out pretty good. We actually talked about that. We covered every possible conceivable way to improve it, but, yeah. I think if you were able to get any one of these neighborhoods to agree 100% on anything, I'd give you this, so I can leave now.
Well, I don't want that.
Okay.
Oh, I don't want that.
So, but it's a noble thought.
3 others out there that do.
Even when we were,
Sorry.
one time we brought it up, and I may have been on planning commission, in our neighborhood ordinances, when someone builds a new neighborhood, you designate spots for the cans and pour a concrete pad. Of course, that, just a little one, trash can goes here and, but you can't, that adds to the cost of building a home. I mean, if you look at the post office, what they've done in new neighborhoods, they put those cluster boxes, and I don't hear people complaining about that. You have to go over to that cluster box to get your mail. But anyway, this is simply, I don't think it's workable. I just don't think you can, that service has to stay. And I'm not hearing consensus from anyone that wants to pursue this. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Are
that's-
you in agreement?
Well, again, I brought this up knowing full well that this needed, 1, 4 of 7 votes up here, and 2, it needed the votes of the citizens to go forward. And I figured that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
fi-
It's
I
a
figured
good-
that, but I think it was at least worth a conversation to
Absolutely.
start.
And someday, maybe, when in a new development ordinance, there might be a way to facilitate it, maybe.
I think that's a
On a
good
brand new
idea.
neighborhood. I think that's about the only way.
I would think so too,
Yeah.
because right now you got people set in their ways. You're not gonna change them.
Right,
So I think the
right.
new subdivisions, as they come up and the streets are wider and it's planned, yeah, that might work. But,
Yeah.
right now no, I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah, and we do have the waiver process. My mother, before she passed in the last few years of her life, used that. The driveway was too steep for her. Now, if you call and walk out like me and try to get it, I'm pretty sure staff are gonna say, no, stop, we're not gonna do this
We
because you're
sent
lazy.
someone out to meet with
No,
you.
yeah, I'm just gonna be honest. We've had that happen, I believe. We're not gonna play that game with people. It's for people who truly have some disability or whatever that they can't put it out. Because the driver's got to stop, get out and go. That's not the most efficient action, but we do owe it to some of our older citizens who need it, and that's fine. That's
Don't
fine.
start talking about outlawing old people.
No, not at all. I don't want to do that. Those are the wise folks. So, okay. So this issue will go no further then. We don't expect anything of staff. But again, thank you for the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Daryl.
Daryl. And you didn't cough very much either.
I tried.
So we're going to talk about potholes now. Mr. Delagarza, you had asked about that. I was hoping that, Donald, you'd bring us a big
Piece of
form with a sample pothole with the strata, and
That would be a mess.
that'd be fun to put it on wheels. You could have rolled it in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tonight we're here to talk about, one of my favorite subjects, potholes. The conversation comes up all the time. We have a lot of issues with those, but rather than just stand up here and talk to y'all about potholes, we thought it'd be better if we created a video that would.
Before we look at how to repair a pothole, let's discuss what causes them in the first place.
Jump the gun there.
Before we look at it, so this video is going to show you, one, kind of how potholes form, and then 2, how we go about our preferred method of patching these potholes. And I say preferred method because this is a method that we would like to use every time, but we don't always get to use this method. And I'll talk more about that after the video. I had a lot of help creating this video. Josh and Micah had a lot of patience with me and a lot of expertise to make this thing come out the way it did, so I really appreciate that. And I'm going to sit down for a few minutes, and James, please go ahead and play that video.
Before we look at how to repair a pothole, let's discuss what causes them in the first place. Over time, vehicles driving on the road cause wear and tear.
Maybe not.
Before we look at how to repair a pothole, let's discuss what causes them in the first place. Over time, vehicles driving on the road cause wear and tear. Combining that with the intense Texas heat creates cracks in the asphalt. When it rains, water seeps into those cracks, getting underneath the pavement. With fluctuating temperatures and humidity, a gap forms between the pavement and the base, pushing the pavement upwards. As vehicles, especially heavy industrial vehicles, drive over these weakened areas, the pavement collapses, causing a hole. As more and more traffic drives over that hole, the larger the pothole gets. And now, let's look at how to repair a pothole.
Hello everyone, my name is Donald Reese. I'm the Director of Public Works for the City of Victoria, and we are out here today on Odom Street with Henry Ibarra, who is one of our streets and drainage crew leaders, and he has been with the city for 35, almost 36 years.
Yes, sir.
And most of that time he has spent patching the streets of Victoria. And so today we have a fairly large pothole out here, and we're going to go through our basic steps of how we patch this pothole.
Man, we're gonna start sweeping this thing out. I guess we'll leave it to the side here. Okay, let's get the jackhammer.
Now that the hole has been cleaned up a little and dried out a little bit, our next step is to come in and square the hole off. They'll use a hydraulic tool to come in and make the edges more square. So instead of having a kind of a rounded shape and a belly in it, they'll square it off, which will allow the material to pack in there better and stay longer. If you leave that belly in, then it's going to have a tendency to start kind of wobble itself out, and then you've lost all the work that you've done.
There you go. Let me juice it up real quick. Yeah, right there's good. Yeah. That's good. I'll go to the. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, push it down. Go ahead and start picking.
So now that the guys have squared off the hole and given some edges for that asphalt to really bind to, and then taken some of the belly out of the bottom so that it's not moving around as much, they're going to apply a tack oil. The reason we put that tack oil in there is so that there's something on the bottom of that hole, that pothole, that gives the asphalt something to stick to.
Make sure you get the edge real good. Yeah.
So now that the tack oil is in the hole, we're ready to go with the hot mix, application of the hot mix. Guys are going to drop in enough hot mix to fill this pothole up, and then they're going to rake it in there, make it as smooth as they can, and then after that they'll use a vibratory plate compactor to tamp it down, make everything nice and tight. So now that the asphalt has been applied and it's been raked down and squared up in there and everything's been cleaned up around it, they're going to use a vibratory plate compactor to kind of tamp everything down and get it settled in and locked in before people are ready to drive on it. So now the guys have tamped down the hot mix. It's ready to go. It's ready to drive on. As soon as they clean up, they'll clean up this debris, throw it in the hopper, pack up their cones, and they're off to the next pothole. So Henry, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Manuel, thank you very much. Good job. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
I believe they've got several more on this street alone that they're going to have to get to, so we're going to let them get at it.
Thank you, Donald. That was impressive.
Well, as I said before, this is our preferred method. And what I meant by that is by using our Pro Patch truck and using hot mix. There's quite a few times where we're unable to get hot mix because of cold weather. The plant may not be making it. Maybe the plant is down for maintenance and we can't get hot mix. Or maybe there's so much other business around the area that the hot mix plant doesn't have any extra for us to use. So during those times, we have to use what's called cold lay. And when we use cold lay, we can do that in two different methods. One is the same that you just saw here. We'll use that truck and all the equipment on it to square the hole off and put that cold lay in there. Cold lay is a good material, but it's not as good as hot mix. It doesn't lock in, it doesn't bind as well, so it comes out a little bit sooner than the hot mix would. The other method that we really don't like to use, but in years like this where it's extremely wet and we have tons and tons of potholes, we'll do what's called a throw and go method. And what that basically means is we have a pickup truck that we put a bulk load of a cold lay in, and the guys go and they move from pothole to pothole, and while they sweep it out the best they can, they don't have the equipment necessary to square it off. So they put a couple shovelfuls of the cold lay in there, smack it a few times with the backside of the shovel, and they drive to the next one. It is just a maintenance activity to get us through until we can get in there and do it the right way. In this year's budget, council approved an additional Pro Patch machine. That truck went out on the road last Friday, so we are now attacking these with two Pro Patch trucks, and we have been, there's a larger hot mix plant this year now that's been built recently out on 87, and we're able to get a lot more hot mix. So I think we're going to be catching up with some of this work very, very soon. We get questions a lot on how we go about patching these streets. Where do you decide? How do you decide where you're going to patch? So I asked James to pull up a zone map. We have 8 zones that we patch in throughout the year. And this is our most efficient and effective way of patching. If we can stay in these zones as much as possible, we can really get a lot of work done. What we try to do, our goal is to hit each of these once a quarter. Depending on the weather and depending on the amount of potholes, we may not be able to do that. But on a normal year, we can usually do that pretty easy. The second method we go about patching these potholes is when we get a citizen call in and have a work order created for one. I will tell you that while we will go out and do this as a customer service, it is very, very inefficient to get pulled out of our zones. So we are looking at, we're taking a look at this policy. We've had a policy for the last few years to, once we receive that call, we'll try to go out and address that pothole in 48 hours. But it is very inefficient to pull out of that zone and then go over and patch a pothole and then come back into that zone. It just doesn't work that great. The last comment I have and last thing I want to show you is an overhead view of what many people consider potholes. In my opinion, this has gone beyond pothole, and this is a road failure. There are many different types of road failures. There's a utility install where the bedding has failed underneath, so it creates a small bump. Same thing with like a collapsed storm sewer main. It may leave a small bump. We have to dig those out and fix them. They're not potholes to patch. This right here is a very large area. This is the intersection of Magruder and Kinney Street behind Hidden Meadows.
I knew that.
Yeah.
From the picture.
Yeah. So this is an aerial view which Joshua took with the drone, and you can see that What's causing a lot of this is we've got two issues here. We've got drainage issues that we need to correct, and then we have base failure that's probably caused by those drainage. And so in order to fix this, we really need to ultimately come in and dig this whole area out, take it all the way down, remove the base, and come back in with new limestone base. But until we can get there, what we end up doing is coming back and just patching as best we can. That's really all the fun stuff I have for you right now. So if y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
And Mr. De La Garza, is that what you were wanting when you asked for pothole repairs?
Very impressive. I'm glad that we had this video made. Is it going to be on the television, Channel 15?
Yes, sir, I believe it will.
Good.
I just have a question, Donald.
Yes, ma'am.
That second Pro Patch machine that you got, are we working it with the same number of crew members that we have right now? Or do we need to get some more people, or how are you working it right now?
No, ma'am. We're using that, the throw and grow crew. They now have a Pro Patch truck to use. So
Okay.
it's the same amount of crew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. Because I didn't know if you could make a small crew with a throw and go to do the small.
Well, we always have a standby crew that if it gets so bad that we need to get a third crew going, we can always get that throw and go crew going again, which I would prefer not to, but if we have to, that's what we will do.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What's the key
Mr.
word to
Reese?
get you out there?
I'm sorry? Yeah.
We used to do more point repair at various budget years, and I'm not sure where the budget is this year on point repair. And point repair might be classified as that shot you just showed, that T would be done completely, dug out new base if necessary, or whatever, as opposed to redoing the whole street. Now, whether that picture wasn't clear enough, it could be the whole road is alligatored and in need of total repair.
Right. Well, that road's in pretty bad shape, but that is a perfect example of a failure.
Yeah.
So I guess to answer your question, we do have a budget for that, and we use that line item kind of funds all the work that we do, the materials that we do with our grade all crews. The grade all crews are what's going to come in and start to do that kind of work, but it includes ditch cleaning, those types of road failures, coming back and redoing utility patches after we patch a big utility in the road. Streets crews will come out and fix those, finish them off, and then also crow's nest installations. And that work order list there is unbelievable. All those items take many, many days to do. It's not something that just happens, overnight. It's not a quick repair. So that workload increases quite a bit.
Ms. Elise, this is where you need to ask him, do you need more employees on that crew?
Yes, I know. That's why I
And
was
that, and
thinking,
his answer is going to be yes.
you need more people up there, because I know when George was there, y'all had like 41 employees, and I think you're down to what, maybe 20?
Well, we quit doing the road rebuilds. We outsourced that to totally do the total road rebuilds, and that's why that number has gone down. But
But it looks
Well,
like
I
we
just
need to.
noticed that many times when you look at a road, the road isn't too bad off or might need a little bit, but you'll always come up on an intersection where the cars skid to a stop or there's heavy trucks turning. It's always prone to more damage. That's where point repair can save a street from getting worse because it'll always start deteriorating near an intersection. I was trying to be sure that we still were doing a fair share of that.
We still do that type of work. Yes, sir.
The other thing is asphalt, and I'm trying to remember the number. I believe it's 60 degrees. You can't lay asphalt below 60.
Ken?
Okay.
Below 50 or
I stand
60.
corrected then. Do we still do patches, potholes? It's a patching compound, not exactly complete hot mix.
Well, we use the cold lay. It's either the cold lay or the hot mix. That's the two that we use.
It's one of the most experimented things out there. I've read articles about people mixing. I swear I read one time where they said oatmeal helped. I'm not kidding. I'm not making that up. That is, there's an army out there trying to make a fortune off the best pothole mix. But are you still doing the 4 10-hour days mobilization method, or did y'all?
Yes, sir. We do
That
4
way they
10s.
get-
We have half of our crew works Monday through Thursday, and the other half works Tuesday through Friday.
Okay.
So we always have staff on hand.
Now, the public sometimes, well, we're the city, we're gonna get kind of, people are critical of us at times, but we don't know where every pothole is. Do you know? You don't, I don't think
No,
you do. So
absolutely
we
not.
need the public to tell us, and I remind them that, and there's a really good form online on our website. You go in and put that in, and those guys will show up, because I've done it many times and tested it and made a note to go see, and it works. They show up and do it. So there's a form online for just about anything on the city's website, and the pothole one is specifically there. And I don't think we can talk about this without just mentioning the fact that the majority of the city streets were built without any really good standard.
Yeah, we didn't,
And
Ken and I
we,
were talking about this earlier. We did not improve that standard to what it currently is until, I think we started in 2000, 2002, and it's
Right.
slowly gotten where a lot better.
and we made a couple of improvements since
Right.
then. And I want to mention, and Ms. Scott and I were on planning commission together. And the public needs to understand, when we increase those standards to make better streets, we endured hell from some developers. And I get it, because, just remember, the residential streets, they build and deed them to the city. So when we improve those standards, we raise their cost of those streets, and they didn't like it. And I understand that. So it's this balancing act, but some of those near subdivisions, hopefully those streets are better. And then the long-term cost for the citizens, because it's about everybody. The long-term cost is cheaper, but it's a balancing act. You remember that, Jan?
It was a
That's-
bloody knife fight, I was here.
Yeah, but that first one in '02, I think, was the big one.
Yeah.
And it was
In about 6
something
years
else.
prior.
Yeah,
We did
but,
it again up here.
right. We did several
And
enhancements.
adopting the street maintenance program in 13 was a huge enhancement, because if we
Yes.
can, that's what we're failing to do in previous years, where we were not doing the maintenance on the streets. So
Right,
we've got
right.
to go back and continue, on those good streets, we've got to maintain them. And y'all adopted that, I think, in 13, which set us forth on that program going forward, so. it
So
was
put that
a good
into
deal.
perspective. The reason I turned around, I was looking at that date on that quilt, 1824. But in the last 20 years, we've got street standards. But we've been here since 1820. Does that tell you anything? Okay.
I do have a question. You were talking about, I think you called it spot repair, but it was like in intersections.
Point repair.
Where
Right,
you
point
would
repair.
where you would sometimes have to rebuild. And the very beginning of your pothole presentation showed a crack and showed the sun causing even more problems to the asphalt. My question is more to those spot repairs. Is there any way to beef up that intersection while it's being built? Or is the sun just going to tear it down regardless?
Well,
Because we know it's going to fail sooner.
yes and no. There are ways to beef that up. I mean, if you're doing a point repair, you're focused on a certain area. But if you want to beef up the whole area, you're going to look at a different type of project. You're going to go from a point repair to a large project. Maybe even if it gets big enough, you're looking at a CIP project. So
see.
it depends on what you want to do. You can spend a little bit of money and fix that point, or you can rip out the whole intersection for several $100,000,
Okay.
depending on the intersection.
And short of concrete, which is going to last a lot longer, is asphalt pretty much going to fail just based on sun and stuff, regardless of whether it's 2 inches or 4 inches or 6 inches?
Our standards now are for a 30-year, 20-year, for a 2-inch, but how many years is that? 30 to 50 years on,
Okay,
yeah, but
with proper maintenance?
with proper maintenance. And I brought that maintenance program to y'all where it showed, 3 years you do the crack seal, 7 years you do a
Seal
seal
coat,
coat,
yeah.
and you repeat that, and that's the way you get that 20 years out. If you don't, you're gonna fall back like we have been.
And just the fact that an intersection is used twice as much as the streets coming to it, there's really nothing you do differently?
Right. No, there's really not anything additional done at the intersections. There's just a lot more turning movements and a lot more stopping movements at intersections that slowly cause that. But I mean, all our standards are built to take that into account. So,
Thank you.
sure.
Before Donald sits down, one, good job, but it's a good opportunity to plug irrigation systems when we talk about
Yes, ma'am.
water on the road. you know, if you have an irrigation system, if you would pay attention to the sprinkler heads and let's not water the streets and don't overwater when it's running down the streets, because that does harm the streets. So it's a good time to remind the public on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank y'all.
thank you, Donald. We're still in items from council. Is there anything else? Anybody?
Yeah, I've got one more. I had a couple of people come up to, and I've talked to Charmel about this. We don't have a city flag, do we?
Don't.
Is there any way to look at possibly
Sure, we can look at-
fabricating a city flag?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Come back with some different designs.
They were interested, wanted to know about it. I thought it was great
I
for them
know,
to
I
have
know.
community pride and wanted
Yeah.
to fly it. So
We
I thought I'd
talked
ask about it.
Yeah, we talked about it years ago, but not recently, but no, I'd be glad to.
How do we go about setting up that process of
Yeah.
developing and designing?
I'm
So
sorry.
how do we go about setting up
Well,
that
I
process?
think I
for-
just work with OC on coming up with some different designs, and y'all can look at the designs and see what you like or don't like using some standards.
Cool, thank you.
Got another unpaying job, Betsy Ross.
Can't be that easy. This has to stand for
but I
something,
can't do
this
that.
stand for something. and-
Oh, we'll have universal agreement on a flag. Come on now, that piece of cake. But I would, whether I'm here or not, I would just recommend a big flag with that seal on it, and we just move on
Correct.
down the road, but it's, yeah,
Something
whatever.
simple.
That's great. You do have to get permission to use a city seal on anything.
Yes,
I
you
do
do.
believe you do, so.
And I'd highly encourage all council members to go watch a TED Talk that was done on creating city flags. One of the most fascinating TED Talks I've watched.
Really?
Yeah. But I'm a nerd, okay?
City flag done decades ago that exists in the historic preservation office.
So we do have a flag.
There was one.
Well, so if there was, there still
there
is, so,
is.
so go find it and bring it
We're
to the
done.
next council meeting, okay? Go, all right.
I have one item that
Yes, ma'am.
since we're going to be going into the budget, and I know that the CDBG funds is probably one of the items that could be used for revitalization. I would like to start looking at revitalization programs or something to that effect. And maybe since the CDBG already has those tracks, you know, showing where they can be used. And I know that they have certain programs that they can use in those parts of town. And maybe we could start doing something like that.
Is it, John or Julie, are we fixing to start the new 5-year update on how CDBG funds are being used?
Yes, so
Okay.
we actually have 1 year left on our 5-year comp plan. So this next annual action plan that will be approved this summer will be the last year in the 5-year plan. So we will be starting our new 5-year plan that will have to be approved, I guess, almost 2 years from now, and that'll start the new cycle. So we will be looking at all the programs, and we've got some ideas and trying to work through and flesh those out with HUD. As you know, they were closed for a few weeks, though, so we've got a lot of questions into them. But
Okay.
you'll be seeing a lot, actually, in the next
Okay,
few
because there
months.
was also a program for the Harvey victims, but that wasn't being handled through us, right? The CDBG funds for that's not being handled through us.
Right, the general land office is handling all of the disaster recovery funds.
Oh, okay. Because there's so much work to be done on the south side still, and, you know, I had a lady call me and told me that in her street, every house has got from 2 to 3 families living together, and that's in Silver City. And she was asking, what is the city going to do about revitalization or providing some kind of housing? There is no houses that they can go purchase. You know, the money that they got from FEMA is gone, and they didn't finish, but they just put the roofs on the houses. And, you know, you're talking about a lot of people still being affected that are not coming out and saying anything. But I was shocked to hear that from her. And, you know, she says she moved back to Victoria, but she's going to have to move out of Victoria because they can't afford, you know, they don't have any housing. So I know that we keep saying it's not our problem, but yeah, we need to do something about revitalizing some of those older, you know, parts of town. It's kind of like the street maintenance. See, we don't, you know, have something to repair parts of town, then, you know, you're going to lose those parts too. So I think that we need to look at something like that for the future, especially with CDBG funds, because I know that's about the only thing we can use.
Okay. Okay. Any further items from council? And one more time, we are not moving forward on the one-sided street garbage collection. Make that clear as a bell to everyone. So, okay, good. All right, so we'll close items from council. We'll move into citizens' communication. We had one person asked to be on the agenda, and I don't know if they're here. Are they here? The issue with the billing dispute and waste management? If you're here, raise your hand. Okay, I guess, and I don't know who they were. Did you? Okay, so they're not here. So I was going to ask them to go first, but nonetheless, we'll just move into citizens' communication. Anyone who would like to speak about anything at all, please come forward. Give us your name for the record and limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less.
My name is Michael Vondro. I live at East North Mobile Home Park. We still have dangerous dogs and loose dogs. It is getting better, though, you know. Thanks to Police Chief Craig, he got me a trap Monday and ordered some traps for the community. And I caught a dog, and then the dog owner came harassing the animal control, saying, "What the heck you doing getting my dog?" And he said, "Well, you're supposed to be using a leash, you know." And we got that dog, and it's a police officer remembers me from a city council. He said, "Oh, you're the dangerous dog man," you know. And he says, "I got some good news. I gave the Rottweiler owner a ticket, you know, for a loose dog. That's a $250 ticket, and that's fine, but the Rottweiler's still loose, you know, so I guess he needs to give him another ticket, huh?" And I was wondering if the chief of police, the tickets, the police officers write the dog owners and the animal control when they come on the property and get the dog. I was wondering if they could give a copy of the tickets to the trailer park owners so they could be written up, because they have no intention of doing anything about these dogs. And that's it. I want to thank code enforcement for cleaning up the trailer park, all the debris, and that mattress since December was picked up. And I just want to appreciate Juan Briones, his boss, and all the ones under him for their outstanding service, and Paul Polasic, the mayor, for suggesting commissioners court. And I've been going over there, and Judge Zeller and the commissioners have been doing an excellent job. There you go, under 5.
Very good. Oh, yeah, you did it quick.
And
Thank you.
I just wanted to give the police chief the address to the trailer park owner, and
Okay.
that's it.
Very good.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm glad it's working out. Okay, citizens' communication is still open for anyone else. Take your time.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this issue that happened to me back in October 1. That day I was kidnapped and taken from the Social Security building by a variety of people and delivered to a benevolence center in Houston, Texas. I was taken there without my consent. I was put there because somebody had created a very descriptive and evil description of my activities. I'm not a dangerous person. I'm not a mentally ill person. And these are derogatory remarks often used by people of hate and dislike just because they want to hurt somebody. Now, we have a subject that right now is being discussed, and that is mental illness. I had observed what it's like to be accused of mental illness fraudulently. This action that happened to me turned out to be a fraud that was set up to send me to Houston to be shut in confinement for 18 days and supposedly educated in curing mental illness by a bunch of people that couldn't speak very well English. They couldn't write English. These people spoke a different basic language. They were not cultured to the quality level of this occupation needs to be in order to provide quality for this nation. They were wrongly placed there, and they tried to bill my name by moving my medical humana from a different place to their place in Tyler, Texas, which is added to this dishonest organization. Now, I'm sorry for my action today. I have stressed out. I was so tore up and discouraged. My hands shook. I was scared when I got in that place because I was taken without any information of what was going to happen to me. And when I got to this place, I thought I wasn't going to be coming home the way they treated me. And I'm telling you, I'm still shaken from this. This happened in October 1 last year, and I have nightmares from it. And there's people here in this community that need to be educated on what mental illness really is. It's so easy to take somebody and accuse them and then go and lie to a judge. And the judge will just go ahead and send them off down, pack them down the road because of somebody just said that they are. We need to have the law corrected in Texas to apply to the qualities of the Constitution of this United States. That you are committed, and a committed person must be proven before you can punish them. This judge didn't commit me and proved of my punishment. And that came right from this center. Now you have some very dishonest people here.
Sir, is that about the conclusion? I'm over here. Is that about the conclusion of your?
Thank you. I will.
Okay.
I'm so depressed from this still. It's tearing me apart.
Well, I appreciate.
sorry.
That's okay.
I'm very sorry.
You did just fine, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. I understand exactly, I think, what you described. So what you've done is bring it to everyone's attention. So that's a good thing. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
What was your name, sir?
Mr. Arden Vesely.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, citizens' communication is still open for anyone who would like to come forward.
My name is Thomas Jost. I want to tell Daryl, thank you very much for picking up the trash for those elderly people. I need to get with you. One of them passed away this last week. We had a funeral for one, and I don't know if her son even knows about, because I instructed her on that, and I've instructed a lot of the other ones. I delivered medication for Rogers Pharmacy for 11 years, so I knew of a lot of these people that needed that service, and I would tell them about it. And Daryl's come around and done a lot for us on that. One other item I wanted to bring up was the limb picking up. You know, each zone has their zones and stuff. Well, it always falls, like for my zone, always falls in that one part of the year. Okay? And it's the worst weather of the year right now. Okay? We need to rotate that around where it goes into different areas every year. Because like mine is this month, okay, or last month. How many days can we get out there and do anything with those tree limbs? It's dangerous to do them, okay? So let's see if we can rotate that around a little bit to help people. Another thing, we need to have our ordinance people know the city ordinances. One of the things that happened to me this last year, my neighbor had 4 baby calves in their backyard, in town, in the city limits. One of them died. We notified animal control. We notified the city ordinance. We called them before the calf died, and they wouldn't come out. They didn't know about calves in the city. Well, we don't cover that part of it. Well, after the calf died, we notified the police about it also. We were told later on, we heard rumors that the calf had Banks disease. Banks disease is spreadable to humans, okay? Nobody in the neighborhood was notified of anything about it. We never heard a word about it. I did bring it up to Paul. I hadn't heard nothing back from you either, Paul.
Yeah.
But I appreciate everything everybody does in the city, but we need to start looking at these different things that are going on. You're gonna see my presence up here a little more now. I retired on November the 20th. And I'll be up at city council meetings quite often.
Is that a warning or?
It's a warning and a promise. It's a warning. Tom knows me.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of these gentlemen know me. I've been around for a long time. And Mayor Reed used to love me coming up here. He would see me sitting out here and he'd go, Mr. Jost, what are you going to bring up tonight? Have a wonderful day, everybody. I appreciate your time.
One of the things, and I appreciate you, Mr. Jost, is you've been counseling me on how to be a good mayor for a couple of years now, but I don't run into you like I used to, and I did.
You don't come to the gym anymore.
I know, I'll get back. I got 7 more meetings, buddy, and I'll see you there.
All right.
And I remember that, we talked about it. Animal control is the county. Animal control is not run by anyone in this room.
Yeah, I know.
Now, if you complain about the library, don't go to the county, go to us. You know, there's things they do, things we do. Now, I did follow up. I just never got back to you. We couldn't find a record where you'd called. But really, that issue with the calf, yeah, that's just animal control. Poor Julie, y'all's department probably should maybe know where to refer people, but it's a common issue. So sorry that happened.
We asked them, and you know, we knew it's county. We notified them, but then it's also part of the city ordinances not to have these animals in town.
Yeah.
And
But-
so the
And animal
code violator-
control enforces that ordinance.
Right. But you gotta notify a code violation first, right?
No, animal control.
Just strictly animal control. Okay.
Yeah, as far as I know. I mean, that's
Well,
the
we don't
best
have
place to
any more
start.
in the neighbor's backyard. We just have dogs now that
Okay.
bark all night long now.
We'll take that one up later, but I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Okay. Citizen communication still open. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no one get up, we'll close citizens communications. We have two items with public hearing. And just a side note, there is a public hearing where on each of these where someone can get up and talk if you like, but just on that item. Go ahead.
The first item is item C1, an ordinance calling for a joint general election between the City of Victoria and Victoria Independent School District on Saturday, May 4th, 2019, for mayor and council members for District 5 and 6, establishing procedures for holding the election, designating the precincts and polling places for the election, appointing certain officers to conduct the election, providing for the sharing of expenses, providing for savings, declaring an emergency, and providing an effective date.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing on C1 if anyone has any questions about this specific item being the election. Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, the ayes have it. C2.
C2 is an ordinance adding Article 4 to Chapter 22 of the City Code to regulate the use of golf carts and neighborhood vehicles on city streets, providing for publication, enforcement, codification, and savings, and declaring an effective date.
So we'll open the public hearing on item C2. If anyone would like to speak to that item, now would be the time.
Do we know what is Article 4 and what is Chapter 22?
So come on up, make sure everybody can hear you there. So you want to know what Article 4 and Chapter 22 is?
Yes, sir.
Sure, Chapter
Thank you,
20.
Mr. Mayor. It's Frank Worden, 1200 West Commercial. And Happy New Year.
Good to see you. It's been a while.
The year of the Lunar New Year, and I'll try not to be a bore. But I would like to know where this stands. I just saw about it in the newspaper, and we're not Port A, we're not Port O, and we're not New Braunfels. Is there any way that we could know what is Chapter 22 and what is Article 4 that would be added?
Sure.
Isn't that up there? I mean,
Yeah, Chapter 22, I'm looking up the heading of Chapter 22. I don't remember what the title of that chapter is, so I'm flipping through here. Chapter 22 is titled Traffic, and so all of the city's traffic ordinances are collected in there. And then Article 4 that we are adding was printed in the packet for this meeting so that the public could see it. If you don't have a copy, we'd be happy to share that with you. I'll give you my copy.
Could you brief it?
Say again?
Could you brief it?
I will, actually. As soon as the public comment is over, I expect to do a briefing at.
We
When we
would
get a
like to
motion.
know what we're speaking to, sir.
That's a fair point.
Okay.
And this section, this article would add regulations for golf carts and neighborhood vehicles.
and I would remind too, that this is the first reading.
Yes.
So we'll have another reading, and if you can, we can get you a copy of everything you need before the next one, Mr. Weird, and that way you can look at it closely. And then,
After he reads the first reading, I will speak to it.
okay, but you can,
Thank you,
just,
sir.
it'll be back on our next agenda, because we'll vote again. And then at that time, even between then and now, if you want to learn more, you might want to
I
contact.
will listen to the reading and then I
Okay.
will speak. Thank you.
Okay. Well, okay. All right, anyone else would like to speak to item C2? Okay, I need a motion.
Make a motion.
Did I close the public hearing, excuse me?
Make a
So we have
motion to approve C2.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion where we can allow, Mr. Attorney, do you want to debrief us?
Sure,
further?
absolutely. Councilman Young requested that we create an ordinance to allow the use of golf carts on city streets. There is a provision in state law that allows a home rule city to create this kind of regulation and broaden the use of golf carts in their city. And so the regulation that we've created is based in part on state law, based in part on a model that we took from the city of New Braunfels and applied some of their logic to our city. And then it is further tailored to our city specifically and some of the things that we wanted to see in it. It was circulated and reviewed by the chief of police, the city manager's office, Councilman Young ahead of time. And so I think we've done a good job of bringing back an ordinance that's going to reflect the needs of our city. Generally speaking, the law is divided into two different classes of vehicles that are allowed: golf carts and neighborhood vehicles. I think we caused some consternation among the public when we called them neighborhood electric vehicles before, because that's the term that's used in state law. We stripped out the requirement that they be electric so that gasoline-powered vehicles could be allowed. But if I happen to misspeak and say neighborhood electric vehicles, it's just because I'm used to seeing that phrase in state law. We are not limiting this to electronic vehicles. The difference between a golf cart and a neighborhood vehicle is that under state law, a golf cart is not allowed to travel more than 25 miles an hour. So if you have a vehicle that will travel, a golf cart that goes faster than 25 miles an hour on level paved surface, what you have is a neighborhood vehicle instead. A golf cart is limited in where it can be operated because it is a slow-moving vehicle. And for safety reasons, we don't want slow-moving vehicles out on busy streets. If you have a faster golf cart that qualifies as a neighborhood vehicle, and you add some additional safety equipment, then our ordinance relaxes some of the restrictions on where you can drive that vehicle. And so it, in that sense, encourages people to use a safer neighborhood vehicle for their local transportation. Generally speaking, neither golf carts nor neighborhood vehicles can be operated on streets that have a posted speed limit greater than 35 miles an hour. The reason for that is state law prohibits either of them from traveling more than 35 miles an hour. And we don't want them traveling on streets with a higher speed limit because then they won't be traveling the same speed as traffic. We will not allow them to be used on state roads within the state highway system. And those are called out in the ordinance. Streets like Navarro, Main Street, Salem, Moody. Golf carts, the slower moving vehicles, are not allowed to cross streets that have a posted speed limit higher than 35 miles an hour. But a neighborhood vehicle can, because a neighborhood vehicle has that additional safety equipment like turn signals and brake lights, safety belts. A golf cart is not allowed to travel more than 2 miles from the location where it is usually parked, but a neighborhood vehicle can. Both golf carts and neighborhood vehicles must have headlamps, tail lamps, side reflectors, a parking brake, and a rear view mirror. But if your vehicle is faster and you want it to qualify as a neighborhood vehicle, you have to additionally have turn signals, a horn, brake lights, seat belts, a windshield, and a vehicle identification number. If you have all of those additional safety requirements, then you get to qualify for that lesser restricted travel that I've been describing. Finally, I want to say the following regulations apply to both vehicles, and they are kind of the method of operation of these vehicles. The operator has to carry a driver's license, has to follow all state and local traffic regulations, has to use either the turn signals on the vehicle or hand signals, has to remain seated, has to maintain insurance on the vehicle, and they are not allowed to travel or park on sidewalks or the hike and bike trails, and they are not allowed to pull a trailer or any object or any person, and they are not allowed to carry more people than their designed seating capacity. All right. So it's an ordinance that's trying to balance the desire of some of our citizens to have a more casual vehicle while simultaneously trying to keep all of our citizens safe. I'll answer any questions that anyone may have.
I saw on one of the requirements that it has to have a sign that says slow-moving vehicle?
Yes.
Are both of them going to be required?
Thank you. I skipped over that part. A slow-moving vehicle emblem is the red triangle that you're used to seeing, right? And those are required on golf carts, but not neighborhood vehicles.
Okay, because I was looking for it. I said, I knew I saw it, but I don't know which one. Okay.
I have some questions about just the operation on streets. Would these be subject to the open container laws of the state?
That's a great question. Under our local code, we say that operators have to follow all state and local traffic regulations, and to me, that would include the open container, driving while intoxicated, all of those types of regulations, speeding, that are in place for other vehicles. It is somewhat ambiguous, and I will tell you that I have not gone that extra step. You asked me this question just before the meeting, and I think it could potentially stand to have some clarification. At the very least, I can say that it would be a violation of our local code and could be prosecuted as a misdemeanor here in municipal court.
And additionally, people have talked to me about parking, talked about some areas where, maybe some other towns where these are very prolific. And basically, the questions are, where do you park on the street? Can you park on the sidewalk? And then also at a commercial establishment, can we in some way regulate that they have to be parked in parking spaces?
That's also a great question. With regards to parking spaces on public property, the streets, I think the code is, the ordinance is pretty clear that they have to follow local traffic regulations, which would include parking. And so they must be parked in appropriate parking spaces, marked parking spaces. They have to follow the same time limits if it's a 2-hour parking space. When you start talking about parking on private property, I think that now you've probably stepped beyond the scope of what our ordinance is. Certainly, there are ordinances, state laws with regards to parking, like in handicap spots, that a golf cart would have to follow. But with regard to general parking in a private parking lot, I don't think that our ordinance covers that.
And is there any way that it could? I'm thinking about, if a vehicle is parked in an odd space in a commercial establishment, I guess they would have it towed.
That's a good question. I'd like to
Today.
look into that further. And I could look into that further and bring back a proposed revision or a further comment at the second and third reading if you'd like.
Would.
Okay, I will.
Any further comments? Now, I think Mr. Weirden is asking to reopen the public hearing. Does anyone have an objection to that? Okay, because we don't normally do that, but we will. So, public hearing's reopened. Go ahead, sir.
I would feel ill at ease even addressing it without knowing that, and you may, of course, start the clock.
Oh, go ahead. Okay, we better, so.
My item in being here this evening is public safety. If you've ever buried a child, you don't want to do it again. You would hate to see grandchildren go that way. Now, they are quite lovely and quaint in Port O'Connor and in Port Aransas. One of the things that I'm seeing is a flag. The flag is actually something to keep 2 dune buggies from jumping into each other as they come over the hill, the high flag. The slow-moving placard, at least when I was at Texas A&M, it was for an agricultural vehicle. Like if you're coming out of a dairy farm and you've got the manure spreader fully loaded, you don't want anybody running into the back of it. I believe it's an agricultural commodity. The only other place I've seen it used is on an Amish wagon, and I think they just kind of put that on there because they were getting tired of getting run into. When there is an accident on the loop, all of the diesel trucks come across the Moody Street Bridge. So if someone ran up to Rosebud Cafe to get some hamburgers and then bring them back across down by the park, per se, they will be crossing Moody Street, and they, if I would have seen it, I would have stopped. I would say before you go much further on this to ask the police department if they feel able or if they have the manpower to be real stringent on the driver's license portion of it. Well, we don't go to school today, and we know the parents aren't there, and so we're going to take the cart. We're going to go to Facetti's Delicatessen after everybody else leaves, and we're going to get a piece of pie. It's a safety issue. They are rather quaint at Port A, Port O, and New Braunfels has the river, the tubing, Landa Park. The only time I can see them safe, and they are well used, in a parade setting, because the parade route downtown or in other places is exemplary. You're not going to be out there in one of those on a parade route, whether you're patrolling or whether you're just going, you know, as that being your float. You're not going to have to tangle with a vehicle. I would just ask you to say the safety fact is just what I'm here for this evening. Does the police department feel like they can work with this added thing? Do they have a driver's license? Do they have insurance? And like I said, this is the Lunar New Year, and it is the year of the pig, and so I will not be a bore. Do some consideration on that. It's a safety factor. Thank you. And Mr. Halapaska, well in your next endeavor. Same for you, Ms. Manager, and same for you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Word. Okay, so we did open the public hearing. If anyone wants to speak to this item, now's the time, just in case anyone else. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion. We don't have a motion, do we?
We do have a motion
We
and
do?
a second, yes.
Okay, okay. Any council discussion? I would just add, we'll have another reading of this and another vote, and if you have questions or clarifications between now and then, get that, assuming this passes, so. Ricky, you look like you're gonna say something. No? I would, and Mr. Weirden makes an important point about safety, and I know that we're all concerned about that, and, you know, I suppose if I hopped on my bicycle and crossed Moody and went to go get some food and came back, it's a similar issue, you know, bicycles, even less visible. Everybody has to do our best to follow the rules. This is a little bit new for Victoria. I know how I'm gonna vote, because I think it's just something we have to try, so.
How prolific is this? I mean, I live in a subdivision where there are golfers, so I'm used to golf carts, and I know that they are going on the street to the club, and that's it. Do we have vehicles moving all over town, or?
I think that they're in pockets of neighborhoods.
I would agree. And I would expect, you know, and I have witnessed, I think a lot of it now is not legal, but this will make some of it legal as long as they follow the rules. And I would hope PD, you know, it's just something else they have to look for, but young people, you've got to have a driver's license to do this. So when that 12-year-old with 3 or 4 10-year-olds hanging off it goes zipping down the street, that's illegal now, and it will still be illegal after this, assuming this passes. So those are the things that are going to happen, and those are the things I see that hopefully, you know, PD can't be everywhere, but they'll do their best, so. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same?
Aye.
Okay, got that. Thank you. All right, we'll move into our consent agenda.
There are 3 items on the consent agenda that will be approved by a single vote tonight. They are first, the approval of minutes of the special and regular meetings, January 15th, 2019. Second, an ordinance providing for the extension of certain boundary limits of the city of Victoria, Texas, and the annexation of territory consisting of approximately 60.25 acres of land, which includes portions of Placido Benavides Drive and Salem Road rights-of-way near the vicinity of the intersection of the proposed Placido Benavides Drive and Salem Road, adopting a service plan for the territory, providing for publication and savings, and declaring an effective date. And third, a resolution approving the City of Victoria's investment policy and a list of qualified brokers who are authorized to engage in investment transactions for the City of Victoria, and declaring an effective date.
Motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, ayes have it. E1.
Did we pull C3?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, there was an
Yes.
updated.
Thank you. There was, some of you received a preliminary version of the agenda that had an item that later got pulled. And so I'm sorry if you didn't get an updated version. I didn't, mine still has C3 on there, but we skipped right over it.
Okay. Well,
I drew
didn't know
lines.
either.
I drew lines through mine today. Sorry about that. I should have mentioned that.
And the agenda that got posted to the public was,
Yeah.
it was
That's
not on
correct.
there.
That's correct. All right, so we're up to E1, which is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute listing agreements with Griffin Realty Advisors LLC to offer city-owned property for sale, including 10 acres of land on North Bend Jordan Street for $350,000 and 2.81 acres of land at 6103 Dairy Road for $245,000, and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Are there any questions?
These are for 1 year? Just about?
I think the contract was a one-year contract, listing, yes.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
So those proceeds aren't in the budget, so I hope they sell and you guys get to figure out what potholes you want to fix. and what
We need
roads.
some more pothole money, okay?
Yeah, okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second, I believe. Sorry, I'm a bit distracted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, E2.
Item E2 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to secure a Boot Fest headliner entertainment in the amount of $40,000 and declaring an effective date.
This may need some explanation before we get a
This-
motion and a vote. A
well,
motion and a second if possible, because
may,
it's
the-
very vague.
Yes, it is. Thank you. The, council, the resolution that was published as part of the packet did not include the offer form that has been put at your desk, and I'll let Joel explain what the offer entails.
Absolutely. Thank you, Council. Now, what you have before you, as Thomas mentioned, is an offer form, not an official contract. Now, an offer form is a statement of intent, basically, that you send to the booking agency, in this case, Red 11 Music for the artist, Co-Wetzel. We would sign that offer form, Charmel would sign that offer form, and if the entertainer accepts it verbally, at that point, it basically becomes a binding agreement in the entertainment world, in the booking agency world. After that, a contract would be generated, which we would review, legal would review for any kind of issues. So this is sort of a first step of two to secure the entertainment. You know, we did discuss this artist in the lead up to this meeting also has another offer on the table, so there was possibly, it could be a different artist at this time, but this was our first choice. I did speak with the booking agency yesterday. The artist is still available, and they're kind of holding that for us. So we do have a great relationship with this booking agency, so we'd like to move forward with this offer for this artist, Co-Wetzel, which would be the first step before a contract to secure a Boot Fest headliner.
Okay. I'm good.
Do we need a motion or do we have? I move to adopt.
I'm sorry, Mr. Young.
Oh, I said that they're really good.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't mean
We have it,
anything
is that a
to me.
second,
motion's
sir?
a
Yes.
That's a second, okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Are there
I
any
know the
further
rules.
questions?
Have we used him before?
We have not, no ma'am. He is a pretty fastly rising artist in the Texas country scene. Last year he was quoted at $15,000, this year going up. So he's beginning to headline festivals around the state, getting quite a following. You know, these artists, you know, you have sometimes a window of only a year or two to really get them. We've had artists at Boot Fest who are now over $100,000 in terms of guarantee fees. So sometimes some of these artists, they move pretty quickly up the ranks, and your window to get them sometimes is pretty small. So
Okay.
Is this compensation what we're gonna pay him, or is this just a budgetary item?
this would be the compensation that the entertainer receives. Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
I will say that our total entertainment budget has not moved up. It's just a focusing of that towards that headliner act. And we still would spend around that $65,000 for all of our artists, including our Saturday night, or Saturday during the day, the gazebo artists, our Friday night lineup, and our Saturday lineup.
Compared to your budget, what percentage is it?
I'd have to get an exact number on that. You know, if you look at, you know, offhand our full Boot Fest budget, I'd have to say roughly maybe 1/6.
You know, we didn't get a detail, and I'd like to see a detail for last year's Boot Fest. We never did get that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, we did.
You
We
did?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you?
Maybe I wasn't at that meeting.
I don't remember.
I don't remember the date. I'm trying to,
We
I
did do our
blank on
boot.
the date when you did the Boot Fest.
That was at the January 3rd meeting.
Okay.
I don't remember, but I
Yes.
thought, We usually get a pretty good detailed item of that, and I don't remember seeing it.
There was a
maybe.
video, wasn't there? Did you
Oh, the
show-
video, but we didn't have,
I'll be happy to give you one.
please.
The detail was not presented at the council
I
meeting.
didn't think so. I
But
didn't think
I'll
it
be
was.
happy to give you one.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, okay. We
Yes.
did go over the numbers that night,
Yeah.
high-level numbers. Okay.
Yes, there was nothing in the details.
Oh,
in-
you're wanting the line item numbers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same.
Aye.
Okay. E3.
E3 is a resolution rejecting all bids for management and operation of the city's compost facility and declaring an effective date.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? Darrell, do you have anything to add? to
I
what
got
was
my
in-
voice back a little bit after
Okay.
not talking for an hour, so I can answer any. I received 2 bids. Neither one of them would be a good deal for the city. I'd like to go back, renegotiate, and then possibly come back with a better deal for the city.
Okay.
Do you think that?
Understood. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Do
Ms.
you think
Solis?
that we'll be getting a better deal if we stay with TLM? Do you think to stay, will they work with us?
Yes, ma'am. They have
Okay.
indicated that they would. The question is going to be based off of how long that deal will be and what that price will be. So I do have more leverage this way.
Okay.
Yes,
Quite a
sir.
dramatic increase.
Yes, it was.
Anytime, and I want to make sure I'm clear with this, because as we talk about commercial, I want to keep that in mind. Anytime that you had a long-term contract, this was a 10-year contract, that you put something out to bid, you take that risk. It's been 10 years since we've been in the market. They actually worked with the city to develop this, and I think that was part of the deal. So, but when you, and the mayor's shaking his head, anytime you go out to the market after 10 or 15 years, we're gonna have the same issue when we go out with our landfill in 10 years from now. You take that risk. It does not always mean that you're gonna get cheaper rates. Things have gone up through the years. We tie our contractors, for the most part, to CPI. It's hard to make money on CPI because there are years you go backwards and there are years you stay the same. You get your increases in there too, but they usually don't match what you actually see as private industry.
Well, like on recycling, that's tied to basically what the Chinese are willing to pay for scrap paper.
Exactly.
Was a big deal. Along with the trade wars and being a victim of our own success, we've dropped that market down to nearly nothing. We have to subsidize it tremendously. I thought perhaps the same was happening here, being somewhat a victim of our own success. Everybody and his dog is doing composting.
I would have to disagree a little bit with that. I think, part of the reason is that we're kind of in an area where it's hard to get rid of what we make and sell enough volume. I think part of that goes back to marketing, which we're really going to push in this new contract. And some other things that I've addressed in the RFP that would be put into any negotiation that I do going forward.
Darrell, is this the contract that we have a cap of 8% increase? Is that the same one?
No, ma'am, that's
Oh,
the
it's not.
landfill.
Okay. Thought I had.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item E4 is a resolution approving the optional redemption of the City of Victoria, Texas pass-through toll revenue and limited tax bonds, Series 2011, maturing on August 15th, 2026, calling such maturity for early redemption, approving and authorizing the execution and performance of all documents and procedures thereto, and declaring an effective date.
So move.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any questions?
This is redeeming all the bonds?
This is redeeming the 2026 maturity of $600,000.
Okay. It's paying off earlier than we had expected?
We're still on plan. We took a 20-year maturity and paying off in 11. I think the last year's in 2022.
Not a bad
Good
gig.
revenue.
No, it's a great deal.
Yeah.
It was structured just nice.
The state doesn't do this anymore, do they? They don't.
No, they figure it out.
Well, that was a great savings, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Ayes have it. Thank you.
E5 is a resolution ratifying the city manager's execution of a minor construction contract and an amendment to that contract with Dago Rodriguez doing business as JNR Contracting Services Incorporated in the amount of $38,720.75 for emergency sewer repair on South Lawrence Street and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Jobs completed?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Ayes have it. Thank you, Donald.
E6 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to extend the term of the current agreement with Champion Infrastructure LLC for street sweeping and to declare an effective date.
Move we adopt?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? They're
This
doing a good job, I think.
This is the second year, so we still have one more year for the contract?
That's correct.
Okay, and then if we do the extension of the time, are we gonna start the third year from then on?
Yes.
Or, okay,
Yeah,
After
the-
the extension.
after the extension?
Yes, ma'am.
If we approve the extension, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
great.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Okay, E6 passes.
Thank you.
One city manager report. Mr. Craig.
Going to do his annual racial profiling as required by the state.
He gave it to us.
I'm going to be referring to this document that's in your package that is titled Racial Profiling Report 2018. Now I have it.
Um,
And it looks like this. It says full report, racial profiling.
It was laid out on the diet.
was laid out.
It was
Oh.
not in the file.
I saw it.
Everybody.
I know you passed them out.
Does everybody have a copy?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And before you is the 2018 racial profiling report that the Victoria Police Department needs to submit to the state.
Thank you.
This report is required by law to be presented to the governing body of each law enforcement agency each year before March 1st. This report has changed from previous years, so I want to take a couple of minutes and just walk you through that because it's going to look different if you have seen the last couple of years. The first of many changes that you're going to note is that the report itself has changed. And so in previous years, we used to fall into one of three categories, and that being an exempt agency. An exempt agency was an agency that did not effect traffic stops. That wasn't part of their primary duty assignment, similar to what you see at the college. That would be an example of an exempt agency. That's not their primary purpose, to pull over vehicles. Then you would have a partial exemption, and that's where we fell into in previous years. A partial exemption agency would be those agencies that have video recording equipment that captures all traffic stops. And we have video, we have in-car dash cams, and we have body cams. So we qualified to fill out a partial exemption report. If you go to the last page of that I stapled there, a last paper clip to that is last year's 2017 partial exemption report. That's the way the report used to look, and then the law has changed to capture some additional information. I'll get into that. And then the third version is a full report. That was last year. If you did not have the ability to videotape your traffic stops, then you had to go to what's called a full report. So you had to report to the state annually on a full report basis. The law has changed to allow two categories this year for 2018 data. That is data for traffic stops from January 1 of 2018 all the way to December 31st of 2018. You report those numbers before March of the following year. Now you have two categories that you can fall within. You could still be exempt if you don't make traffic stops. That's not part of your traffic enforcement, similar to what the college does. Then you can file an exempt that you don't need to file the data that's required. All others will file the full report. And then they changed the data that's collected in the full report. And I'm going to go through that real quick with you. So the data that was collected in 2017 talked about race or ethnicity collected for motor vehicle stops that resulted in an enforcement action. And enforcement action was defined as a citation, an arrest, or both. The data that's collected for 2018 and on a go-forward basis is from a motor vehicle stop in which a citation, a warning, and that's a pretty important distinction because we've never had to do that in the past, whether that warning be verbal or written, and or arrest that was made as a result of the stop itself. And we are tasked to collect race or ethnicity, whether the above information was known prior to the stop, whether a search was conducted, and if so, was consent given, was there a physical arrest, physical force resulting in bodily injury was used during a traffic stop. Then we had to also explain the reason for the stop and the location of the stop. So that's the data that we now have to collect and report on an annual basis, and that's what's collected and presented to you in this report that says racial profiling full report. The front page of it is just a introductory page that just explains what the law is concerning, my obligations as the chief and the police department to come before you and get this done and to make that report to the state. If you go to the third page, the one that starts with total stops, if you see that document, it'll say total stops, and right underneath that, the first category that's collected is called gender. So now for the past year, we're collecting data on the gender of the driver. So you can see, and I won't necessarily go through all of these. It'll take me too long, but the gender data is listed there. Race or ethnicity is listed. Was the race or ethnicity known prior to the stop? You should see that to be very disparate in terms of there should be no's should be the larger number almost all the time. If there was a yes there, there's certainly a little bit of a problem that you need to focus in on. And then we go a step further, the reason for the stop, it's violation of the law, pre-existing knowledge, moving traffic violations, vehicle traffic violations. The difference there is a moving violation is a stop sign, a red light, and so on, and a vehicle is, a brake light out, something's wrong with the vehicle, so they got stopped. Then street address is listed. The vast majority of ours are obviously on the city street. Was a search conducted? Yes or no? And then what was the reason for the search? And that data is listed there as well. Was contraband discovered? Yes or no? And then go further and describe the contraband that was recovered. And so that data is listed for your review there. The results of the stop, and again, this is where we added. So there's verbal warnings. You'll notice that written warnings has a 0 to it. We made a policy decision some time ago to dispense with written warnings. That will be coming back now in light of this report in terms of we quit capturing that data because it wasn't relevant to the task at hand, but we're going to start collecting that now and start allowing those written warnings to be conducted. My sense is what you would see is a combination of verbal and written warnings. So the data some would fall into the verbal, some would fall into written. Citations and then arrests. Total of arrests are listed, and then the arrests were based on what? Violations of the penal code, traffic law, outstanding warrant. And then the last thing was physical force resulting in bodily injury used, and you can see 4 occasions in all those yes, and the vast majority, overwhelming majority was no. And that completes the report, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions if you have any. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure this is an obvious one, but the result of the stop, arrest 225, but the arrest total was 304. Is that more people, or is that including other arrests?
Total arrest citations and arrests were 79 and 225 arrests.
So that's your 304.
Yeah.
You add the citation and arrest,
Okay. So arrest total, okay,
79.
thank you.
Under physical force, was that tasing or was that actual hand-to-hand or?
I don't have that data. I could certainly find out and bring it back to you.
Okay, I was just wondering.
What constitutes physical force, though, in that category?
Overcoming resistance, physical resistance on the part of the offender. We'd make a decision that they're going to be arrested, and then they take an action that we have to overcome. So it could be, I don't like to guess, but my sense is it's probably physical force and not tasing. Tasers are captured in another use of force incident.
Okay.
Chief, I'd like to commend you and your officers for a job well done. I'm sure y'all are underappreciated and underpaid. I have a question at the beginning. It says total stops, 12,570. The gender, the race, ethnicity, can't say it. Is that taken from the driver's license itself?
For the most part, they are allowed to ask, some very open questions, if they need to clarify, but generally speaking, we just take what we can see.
I'm glad we invested in the body cams and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
and I will say, my opinion, by looking at this data, is that there's nothing here that jumps out at me that any systemic issue of any type of racial profiling that occurs just based on the data alone. I've long been a believer that racial profiling is more of an individual, officer issue more than an organization issue. But just looking at this data, I don't see anything that jumps out at me as a problem area.
Okay.
Is this report given to the guys so they see what the number of arrests and everything, so they have an idea of what's going on?
We share this with everybody, so
Okay.
everyone knows.
Yeah, not just us, it's the guys that work with you
Absolutely,
too.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. No further questions?
Thanks,
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any further business? None? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, sir. Thanks, everybody.
I thought that's,